From the nation's capital, the Conservative Caucus presents Conservative Roundtable, an in-depth look at today's most important issues.
Welcome to Conservative Roundtable. I'm Howard Phillips, chairman of the Conservative Caucus, which sponsors these broadcasts. Our guest for this broadcast is Terry Jeffrey. Terry has accomplished much in his youth, and he's not yet middle-aged, but he's still accomplishing a great deal. He's one of 11 children. He's a graduate of Princeton. He's been an editorial writer for the Washington Times, nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. He has studied Arabic. He was the campaign manager for Pat Buchanan in Pat Buchanan's campaign in 1996. He has served as managing editor of Human Events. Earlier today, I read a column that he had written for National Review. He's a man of many parts, very talented, a gifted writer. If you've ever seen him on one of the television talk shows, you know he's as good an advocate for conservative public policies as there is. Well, let me begin about Pat Buchanan. Isn't this the year that Pat Buchanan should be running for president?
No doubt about it, Howard. No doubt about it. I think that, if people go back and look at what Pat Buchanan was saying in 1992 when I first worked for him in his original campaign in which he challenged a sitting Republican president, everything Pat was talking about then either has come true or the public policy prescriptions that he was advocating have been shown to be wise and prudent given the course of events since then.
Like Churchill, he'll be well remembered by history because he's written it.
True.
His books about immigration, his books about whether America should be an imperialist country have been prescient. They've been magnificent. They're beautifully written. You get sick of losing, and he came close to toppling an incumbent in 92. He ran a strong race in 96. Y2K didn't go very well for him. There were a number of problems, and that probably discouraged him from further entry. But I'm an admirer of Pat. He's been someone who's been very good to me over the years. I don't agree with him on everything, but I agree with him on most things. And were he to run, I'd support him with great enthusiasm. Why do you think he's written this off? He told me over lunch some months ago that, no, it's Tom Tancredo's turn, and my sister is running the Tancredo campaign.
Right. Well, I don't expect Pat to run. He's run for president 3 times. That's a lot. I mean, you've done it yourself, Howard. I think I suspect he's having a great time writing his books, and his voice is out there. He's on national TV just about every single day. I believe he's working on another book as we speak, and I'm sure it'll be just, I think literally every single one of Pat's books now is a New York Times bestseller.
Yep.
He is having a huge impact and influence on the direction of our country and on the direction, I think, where we're going to be going in the future, doing what he's doing now.
So you think he'll keep writing books but not re-enter the political wars?
That's my prediction, yeah.
Now, what about his anointed candidate, Tom Tancredo? Is he going anywhere?
Unfortunately, no. I mean, I think Congressman Tancredo, he's out there saying a lot of good things, and hopefully people are listening to him. Realistically, I don't think he's a viable candidate.
Now, the surprise of the year has been Ron Paul,
right,
who, thanks to Rudy Giullani, has penetrated the public consciousness and is saying some of the same things that Pat Buchanan has historically said. What do you think is the future of the Ron Paul candidacy?
Well, I think Ron Paul's doing a great job. I think that he's had a very big impact on the Republican presidential debates. He obviously has a constituency in the country. Ron Paul is a pro-life libertarian. When you take someone who's a pro-lifer and a libertarian, they overlap a huge part of the conservative vision, I believe. I'm not a libertarian, but I agree with Ron Paul on most things. I appreciate his record in the United States Congress, where he consistently sticks up for the United States Constitution. all the time you hear Republicans, including the president, saying they believe in strict constructionism or an originalist interpretation of the Constitution. They only talk about it when they're talking about nominating people to the courts. They don't talk about it when it's their own personal behavior using their authority in the elected office they're serving in. So you have congressmen all the time who vote for things that are unconstitutional. You have the President of the United States, in the case especially of the McCain-Feingold campaign finance bill, actually signing a bill that he apparently suspected was unconstitutional.
Oh, he said it was unconstitutional, and he assumed that the Congress would take care of it or the courts would take care of it, and he didn't have the guts to veto it.
But Ron Paul doesn't do that.
That's right.
Ron Paul votes for the Constitution of the United States Congress, which means he votes no most of the time.
So whether or not he emerges as a political winner, his candidacy has been a real plus.
I believe that, yes. And, a lot of conservatives have been critical of Ron Paul's foreign policy, the foreign policies expressed in the debates. I don't agree with Ron Paul's foreign policy exactly. I think he underestimates the ideological element of the threat from al-Qaeda and other Islamist terrorist groups. But I think that there's a lot to be said, even for the things that Ron Paul is saying about U.S. foreign policy, especially the idea that the foreign policy of the United States should not be ideological. It should be based on a prudential analysis of the interests of the American people. I think if you stick with the Constitution, you really have a hard time finding where the Constitution authorizes the President of the United States or the Congress to launch an ideological crusade on behalf of the American people.
Or a preemptive war to promote supposed democracy. If we had democracy in America, right, this immigration bill would be dead.
Well, a preemptive war in defense of the country, like Ronald Reagan did in Grenada, I think is understandable and acceptable. It's even where it's necessary to defend the country against an imminent threat. I believe a president can do it without congressional authorization. If the threat is real and it's going to happen, he's got to act.
If it's imminent, power projection is legitimate.
Right.
I also think that the defense of the United States can justify our defense of Taiwan against Red China because, as MacArthur said, Formosa, beautiful island, is like a giant aircraft carrier floating in the Pacific, and it's a barrier to the hegemonic designs of mainland China and limits their ability to pose a long-term threat to us.
Well, the bottom line is people in elective office can go to the American people and make an argument that any particular act, and we're not even necessarily talking about military force, it can be our economic policy in the world, it can be our diplomacy in the world, but any given act is designed to protect or advance the interests of the United States of America. And then the people can make a judgment about it. It's an entirely different thing when our leaders come and say, we're doing this to end tyranny in the world.
Well, and the irony is that while the goal of our policy should be to defend the territory and population of the United States, our presidents are surrendering the territory and population of the United States to the United Nations,
right,
the World Trade Organization, NAFTA, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the Asian Development Bank, the African Development Bank, and now the North American Union, right, looms on the horizon. Why has there been so little discussion of the North American Union in the major media?
Well,
we heard, and let me just preface that by saying we heard recently that the European Union was celebrating its 50th anniversary, but it didn't come into being 50 years ago. There was the Club of Rome and the iron and coal community, and there was a series of incremental steps that led to a situation where the nations of Europe, 27 of them in the European Union, have surrendered large elements of their ability to be self-determining.
Right.
And that's what's happening here.
Well,
it's incremental.
I have to say, first of all, I haven't been studying and following the North American Union that closely, but I will say this. There's certainly there's a strain of there's an ideology that some people embrace in Washington, D.C. that puts the pursuit of profit or the pursuit of money as the highest good. And I think part of the reason there's that group in Washington, D.C. is because there are vested interests around the country and around the world that would like the United States to follow a policy that allows them to maximize their profits.
The multinational corporations are the principal beneficiaries of the NAFTA superhighways, of efforts to liberalize trade with communist China.
In the movement of people and the exploitation of labor. I can tell you one area where this is startlingly clear to me, because I've done a lot of reporting on the immigration issue, is that industries that can move their production to places where they can exploit third world labor and not have to deal with the constitutional processes and the regulations of the United States of America will move their production there. But then you have industries like construction, restaurants, healthcare, certain service industries that cannot leave the United States. You know, that fast food hamburger place has to be there. You're going to go to a hospital in your hometown. Those are the industries in the United States that Social Security records show are hiring the largest number of illegal aliens. So the industries that can move, the ones that can bring the third world labor here, bring their third world labor here. And what we're seeing in Washington right now with this immigration debate is that a remarkable number of the politicians in Washington really are doing the bidding of those two interest groups, the ones that want to move their production overseas and the ones that can't move their production overseas, so they want to see move overseas labor here, that our political elite is now doing their bidding rather than protecting the interests of the American people.
We're going to have to take a break now, Terry, and when we come back, we have a great deal more to discuss. Please stay with us. We'll be back in a moment with Terry Jeffrey. There are many conservative organizations, but the Conservative Caucus is unique in that our standard for evaluating public policy is the Constitution of the United States. Our goal is to advocate policies which conform to what the Constitution stipulates and to oppose those which undermine the Constitution. It's clear that the federal government has only those powers which are provided in the Constitution, which were initially delegated by the states to the federal government or which were subsequently added by amendment. If we adhered to that principle, your taxes would be lower and your liberties would be more secure.
The Conservative Caucus, www.conservativeusa.org or 703-938-9626.
Here's how you can become a citizen lobbyist and influence how your representatives vote. Write a letter to your congressmen and senators. Speak out on a call-in talk radio program. Write a letter to the editor of your local newspaper and call the Conservative Caucus for more information at 703-938-9626.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks a lot for all you guys have done.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
More than the entire population of Cincinnati. More than all the men and women in the Marine Corps. More than 4 times the number of unemployed auto workers. Since 1980, over 500,000 Americans who make clothing and home fashions have lost their jobs because we don't realize the impact of buying imported goods. So if you think looking for the Made in the USA label doesn't matter,
Next.
it matters.
Welcome back. I'm Howard Phillips of the Conservative Caucus with Terry Jeffrey. Terry, your Human Events, for which I wrote in 1974 after I left the Office of Economic Opportunity, is a terrific publication. And never was it more terrific than it was under your management. National Review has had its down days, but they've got some good stuff in there now. John O'Sullivan had a terrific article about immigration. Clearly, for the left, journalism has been a way to influence public policy. What advice do you give to young men and women who want to impact the course of policy in America?
Well, going into journalism is a good way to do it. And I would recommend to any young person, first of all, be persistent. It took me a long time to get a job in journalism. I graduated from Princeton with a degree in English. I wanted to go back home to California where I grew up. I could not get a job with a newspaper in Northern California, and I define
For
Northern
ideological reasons?
Well, that might have been part of it. It was extremely difficult. Some of the big newspapers were unionized, so they were very reluctant to hire people. But I think part of it was ideological. I finally got a job, Howard, after 2 years of trying. I was offered a job with the Gilroy Dispatch, the garlic capital of the world in southern Santa Clara County. But at the very same time, I had the opportunity to go to Cairo and study Arabic.
I've been to Gilroy. It smells great.
It's a great town. But you be persistent. If you're a conservative, you want to have influence on public policy, and you want to do it through writing, be persistent, get that job in journalism, and learn how to be a reporter. Too many people who want to write as conservatives aren't interested in doing journalism, aren't interested in digging out facts. The truth is, I can say from 20 years in Washington, much of it as a journalist, there's millions of stories in this town that deserve to be told, that never get told. And there's this whole universe of stories that don't get told because most of the editors and most of the reporters are liberals. They have liberal sensibilities. If they know a certain story is out there, they may not be interested in it for ideological reasons, or they may not even realize what a story it is because of the ideological blinders. So I believe even with the proliferation of websites that are from a conservative perspective and other media outlets from a conservative perspective, there's not nearly enough hard reporting in Washington, D.C. from a conservative perspective. And that's a shame because the truth is the government basically is corrupt. The way you keep it honest is by shining sunlight on it. And to do that, you really got to dig around and do reporting in Washington, D.C.
And, of course, the government tells its own story at taxpayer expense.
Yes, it does.
Not just through PBS and NPR, but every department has a huge public affairs division. I remember when I was director of OEO, I inherited about 30 people who were nothing but flacks for the Great Society, pushing that agenda. And there was a time when it was believed to be illegal to use taxpayer money to propagandize the American people. I guess it's still theoretically illegal for the CIA to do it, but everybody else does it. Terry, you've had a lot of political experience. How do you handicap the 2008 presidential race?
Well, briefly, I'd say on the Republican side, Rudy Giullani, unfortunately, seems to have some sort of base of support. Maybe about 30% of the party seems to be with him. In my view, those are the liberals in the Republican Party. I think Rudy's going to be around for a while, and so therefore I think the race eventually is going to boil down to Rudy and anti-Rudy. The anti-Rudy will be the conservative candidate. It seems to me at this point that's likely going to be a fight between Romney and Thompson, both of whom in some ways are newcomers to the conservative movement. Both of them have changed their views on some key issues in recent years. But just realistically, Howard, that's the way I see it. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see what Fred Thompson does over the next couple of months because without a lot of people paying close attention, Mitt Romney has seized the lead in Iowa. He's seized the lead in New Hampshire. He has excellent organizations in those two states. If he can hold on and win those two states, he will be the anti-Rudy person. And he will be the default conservative candidate. Fred Thompson's got to decide, is he going to go out to Iowa? He's going to compete there against Mitt Romney. Is he going to organize for the Ames straw poll, which is which is less than 2 months away, and really try and beat Romney in Iowa? If Fred Thompson's not willing to do that, I think Romney could surprise a lot of people.
And Fred Thompson hasn't been vetted.
Good point.
I've heard him speak a couple of times, and he doesn't talk about issues. He talks about the unfair treatment of Scooter Libby. He talks about how he coached Roberts for the Supreme Court confirmation process. And he's very affable, very charming. But I can't forget the fact that he's a protege of Howard Baker, who ain't no conservative.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the reasons I'm just looking at it analytically, because I'm not endorsing any of these candidates. And quite frankly, I agree philosophically more with the second-tier candidates who are not viable than I do with the top-tier candidates who are viable. But Romney, got bashed around a lot as a flip-flopper, including by me, because he is a flip-flopper. Now, everybody has a right to judge whether they think he's credible and sincere. I think he's flipped in the right direction. Almost everything Romney is saying now is conservative. It appeals to the conservative voters who are going to come out in Iowa and New Hampshire. But he's gone through that beating, Howard. He's still leading in Iowa and New Hampshire. Fred Thompson has not gone through that beating. I think people will be interested in seeing what he said about abortion back in the 90s. A lot of people don't want you to know.
And also look at his clients. as a lobbyist after he left the Senate. For example, one of his clients was the communist dictator of Haiti, Aristide.
Is that for real?
Yeah.
Oh my
Now,
gosh.
why would anyone with a conservative instinct associate himself with that miserable despot?
That is remarkable. Well, you know, there's a lot of conservatives who, I think just because they don't like the rest of the field, they're very anxious to rally around Fred Thompson. I understand it, and I won't say that Fred Thompson might not be an excellent president or he elected.
He might. I'm not. I haven't endorsed anybody, but
he does need to very clearly express himself in an adversarial environment on fundamental conservative issues. And I think people have to look at this guy and say, if this guy is elected president, is he going to stick with us on the issues? I don't think that President Bush, the current President Bush, was vetted hard enough by the conservative movement or the Republican Party. I think a lot of people back in 2000 were saying he's the most electable guy, he's got the name recognition, he's got the money, and they were too easy on him, quite frankly. And I think we've paid a price for that.
What about Newt Gingrich? I have read Gingrich's superb speech at Liberty University after Dr. Falwell died. I was in the audience recently when he addressed people at the American Enterprise Institute. He's a very impressive guy. He's the smartest guy on two legs. The stands he is taking now are stands with which, for the most part, I'm quite comfortable. But then I look back at his record, and in office, he was different than we had hoped he would be.
Well, I agree with that. I think Newt Gingrich is doing a better job of articulating what conservatives believe now than anybody who might be a presidential candidate. He's an extremely intelligent man. He knows what he's doing. He obviously is qualified to be president of the United States. I think he had the strategy apparently of waiting till the fall to get in.
September, November.
Fred Thompson, if he becomes a persuasive conservative candidate, which I think is yet to be seen, could preempt Newt. But if Romney and Thompson aren't doing it, Newt Gingrich still could jump in.
I have a friend who's the chief fundraiser for Mike Huckabee, and he says that Huckabee is going to break into the frontier by defeating Mitt Romney in the Iowa straw poll. Do you think that if Huckabee beat Romney in the Iowa straw poll, would that change things?
Yes. And, I think Huckabee is a unique candidate because he's not non-viable and he hasn't really gotten into the frontier yet. He's sort of hovering in the middle. He is the most eloquent debater. He has been the most compelling figure in either of the Republican or Democrat debates. He obviously has deeply felt conservative instincts and beliefs. There are some people who have attacked. Club for Growth has gone after his record in Arkansas. From what I've heard from his explanations of it, he has very good explanations for what his policies are.
I was in Arkansas for a couple of days as the guest of Eagle Forum, and they are not fans of Huckabee. And they gave a number of reasons why. But I agree with you. He is the most articulate of all of the presidential candidates, top tier or bottom tier. We have to take a break. We'll be back with some concluding comments from Terry Jeffrey. Stay with us. One of the major activities of the Conservative Caucus is Constitution education. We want to help raise up a new generation of leaders who understand the underlying principles of the Constitution and the meaning of its key provisions. Through programs such as Conservative Roundtable, through mailings, workshops, conferences, seminars, we strive to communicate the legacy of the Founding Fathers. Each year we commemorate Constitution Day, September 17th. We publish newsletters, action bulletins, and other materials to promote an understanding of and fidelity to the Constitution, and we work with members of Congress who share our vision and share our concern. We hope you will decide to work with us as well by becoming a supporter of the Conservative Caucus.
www.conservativeusa.org, 703-938-9626.
Here's how you can become a citizen lobbyist and influence how your representatives vote. Write a letter to your congressmen and senators. Speak out on a call-in talk radio program. Write a letter to the editor of your local newspaper and call the Conservative Caucus for more information at 703-938-9626.
There is a better way to have fun with history. Visit americaslibrary.gov. Log on, play around, learn something.
Welcome back. If you enjoy the kinds of issues we discuss on Conservative Roundtable, please check out the website of the Conservative Caucus, www.conservativeusa.org. Fax us your comments, 703-281-4108, or drop us a note, TCC, the Conservative Caucus, at 450 Maple Avenue East, Vienna, Virginia, 22180. Terry, on the immigration issue, which is the big issue this year, a friend of mine of long standing said, the Republicans are missing the boat. They know that if the illegal aliens are amnestied and if scores of millions more come in, they'll never win another election, that at best they'll get a 60-40 split against them. But principled conservatives should understand what that means. It means we'll never repeal abortion. We'll never defeat the homosexual agenda, because even though these illegal aliens may be pro-life or anti-homosexual, they'll elect Democrats who will advance the left-wing agenda.
I think that's right. All of these issues that conservatives have been fought for decades, Howard, we got this close, maybe one Supreme Court justice away from, they'll all go away. Because I think it's important for Republicans to reach out to Latino voters, try and bring as many into the party. I think it's simply unrealistic to believe that if you amnesty 12 to 20 million illegal aliens who are principally from Central America, that we will ever, the Republicans will ever win a majority of that vote. And given the narrow divide of the country on national elections, 2 presidential elections decided by one state in a row, basically we give the presidency to the Democrats. We give the Senate to the Democrats, probably the Congress to the Democrats, maybe for generations.
Terry, it's always great to be with you. I appreciate your writing and your oral exposition. Keep up the great work. And I hope your book on which you're working is very successful.
Thank you,
God
Howard.
bless you. Thanks for
Appreciate it very
joining
much.
us. And thank you for watching Conservative Roundtable.